From the rugged shoreline cliffs of North America's most easterly point to the spectacular fjords of Gros Morne, Newfoundland and Labrador serves up inspiring scenery unrivaled anywhere. It is a place where there are more wildlife than people, more wilderness than roads, and a culture largely unchanged for hundreds of years, in part due to the island's isolation. Commonly referred to as the Rock, it's home to Canada's first English settlement, a place that takes you back in time, and a place where often it feels like time stands still. From St. John's, the oldest city in North America, to Little Paradise with a population of just 2, Newfoundland thrives in uniqueness, and where the people are its greatest asset. There are many ways to explore Newfoundland and Labrador, but none more intimate than when traveling by motorcycle and hiking through the many fishing villages and backcountry wilderness areas. So come join us as we explore the Rock on 2. That's 2 wheels and 2 feet. We will introduce you to the legendary George Street in downtown St. John's and take you on a 16-kilometer hike to the summit of Gros Morne Mountain. Let us guide you in and out of every bay around this island. So let's get this 2-wheel journey started. We start our Newfoundland and Labrador tour here at Cape Spear, North America's most easterly point and some 3,500 kilometers from Europe. The St. John's Harbor in the distance would look the same today as it did to Sir Humphrey Gilbert in 1583 when chartered by England to proclaim its ownership. St. John's, Newfoundland became the first English possession in the New World and is the oldest city in North America. A short distance from Cape Spear is downtown St. John's, and as we ride through, it is quite evident that the old world charm remains here. Its architecture is free from the modern glass towers found in other cities throughout North America. St. John's, though, is a modern city. A city with 5-star hotels, shops, and fine dining restaurants. Once known for its rich and lucrative fishery, Newfoundland continues to receive much of its wealth from the sea. But today, it is the oil and gas deposits offshore that is providing much of the province's wealth. One of the most visited sites in St. John's is Signal Hill. Due to its strategic location, Signal Hill has been home to many fortifications since the mid-17th century. Signal Hill's first purpose was for signaling to the town when a ship would enter its harbor. The signalman would raise various flags that represent and indicate the origin of the ship entering the Narrows. From these signals, the guardsmen would determine whether cannon fire would be warranted. Today, the Cabot Tower ceremoniously stands guard above the entrance to St. John's Harbor. The tower was completed in 1900 to commemorate the 400th anniversary of John Cabot's discovery of Newfoundland in 1497. In 1901, Marconi received the first transatlantic wireless message at a point near the tower, the letter S in Morse code from Poldhu, Cornwall in the United Kingdom. Today, St. John's is the largest city in Newfoundland and Labrador and serves as its capital. Although Newfoundland was England's first possession in the New World, it is Canada's newest province, only joining Confederation in 1949. There are a great many people born here that were not born Canadian, but rather as British subjects. There remains to this day an ongoing debate as to whether Newfoundland and Labrador should have joined the Canadian Federation in 1949. Although St. John's has a great deal of historic significance, it is more commonly known today for its nightlife and traditional music scene. George Street, a street of just 2 short blocks in length, has more bars and pubs per square foot than any other city in North America. During the annual 6-day George Street Festival, more than 120,000 people make their way through the streets and converge on as many pubs. From its renowned colorful row housing in the downtown core, the majestic merchant homes on Circular Road, to the now sprawling suburbs reaching out to the bordering towns, St. John's continues to evolve while maintaining its special charm. The recognition of this rich history and the hospitality of its people is what makes St. John's so endearing. As we ride out of St. John's and into the Conception Bay South area, the cityscape once again changes to seaside communities. Like all seaside communities, their existence began with the fishery, but today its reliance to the industry is far less evident. The entire Avalon region today is enjoying the success of the oil and gas and mining industry, a far cry from days gone by. There's a certain nostalgia riding in the Conception Bay area of Newfoundland and Labrador. It surfaces when you realize that people from Europe began colonizing the New World right where two wheels meet the road here in Cupid's, Newfoundland. Cupid's was established in 1610 by John Guy under charter by King James I to establish a colony on the island of Newfoundland. It was the first English colony in Canada and second in North America only to Jamestown, Virginia, which was colonized in 1607. It was in 1995 when archaeologist Bill Gilbert uncovered the colony of Cupid's, a cellar pit measuring 20 feet wide and 7 feet deep. The thick base layers of the cellar stone walls are clearly visible on the site today and provide a telling window of the domestic life in the frontier of 1610. Establishing this crucial structure enabled the settlers to concentrate on the construction of two additional buildings, one of which was the homestead. Leaving the 1600s, we now find ourselves in Brigus, Newfoundland, an early 20th century Arctic exploration. Brigus was the birthplace and home to Captain Bob Bartlett, the famous Arctic explorer. Although Robert Peary is credited as being the first to reach the North Pole, it could not have been accomplished without the seafaring skills of Captain Bartlett. Truth is, there was no recorded proof of Peary reaching the North Pole, and thus the recorded latitude of 87 degrees 48 minutes in the spring of 1909 by Captain Bartlett was, at the time, the furthest north by any other human being. Here in Brigus, they continue to celebrate the life of Captain Bartlett, and in doing so help keep his legacy alive. Riding through Brigus is like returning to those early days of the 20th century, and Hawthorne Cottage, the home of Bob Bartlett, still stands as the town's most famous site. This beautiful historic town is one of those places that will have you returning time after time. It was here in Brigus where Wanda and I decided to leave the two wheels behind for our first of many hiking excursions. The Brigus Lighthouse Trail follows the rugged coastline to the point and takes about 3.5 hours to complete.
It's down there. It's not that steep, and there's lots of rocks you put your feet on, right?
The scenery on this beautiful sunny summer day was spectacular. The trail challenged you at times, but as our eyes and minds are drawn to the sea, you can't help but think about those early 20th century Arctic expeditions of Captain Bartlett and the challenges they would have endured in their quest for the North Pole. It's back in the saddle again and more riding in the Conception Bay North and Trinity Bay area. communities in this area of Newfoundland and Labrador are absolutely breathtaking. Here is just a small sample of some of the communities we visited in this area of the province. A motorcycle tour of this province would not be complete without spending some time in this area of the Avalon Peninsula. Another day, another destination, and today our motorcycle journey will take us to the southern Avalon, more commonly referred to as the Cape Shore. One of the first communities that we arrive in is the town of Placentia. In 1655, the French, who controlled more than half the island of Newfoundland and most of Atlantic Canada, made Placentia their capital. The French colony at Placentia was a successful one and launched from here at Port Royal the devastating raids on the English during the Avalon Peninsula Campaign in 1696. The Cape Shore was largely uninhabited until the late 18th century, when Placentia merchants Saunders and Sweetman began bringing settlers here from an area around Waterford, Ireland. The river valleys of the Cape Shore are fertile lands, suitable for small-scale farming, a rarity in Newfoundland. Communities like St. Bride's and Angels Cove were originally settled as farming communities, not fishing communities like most settlements in Newfoundland. To this day, commercial sheep, dairy, and vegetable farms are still in operation on the Cape Shore. As we ride down the coast, we arrive at the entrance to Cape St. Mary's Ecological Reserve. This wildlife reserve is located near Cape St. Mary's and is home to one of Newfoundland's largest seabird colonies. The single-lane road to the reserve travels over beautiful barren lands, where the grass sways in the gentle breeze and the tuckamore is the only tree that you will find. The 10-kilometer road leads to the Interpretation Center and Lighthouse, and it is from here that we take our short hike to the reserve. It is estimated that more than 100,000 birds migrate here annually. Species include northern gannets, black-legged kittiwakes, common murres, and thick-billed murres, as well as razorbill and black guillemot breeding pairs. The ocean waters off the reserve also provide a winter habitat for harlequin ducks, common eiders, scooters, and long-tailed ducks. In addition to the numerous birds, humpback whales may be viewed from the cliffs during the annual Capelin Run. At Bird Rock, you can witness the several thousand nesting gannets. Other nesting locations can also be viewed from shore. So as the sun sets on another fine day of riding and exploring, we ponder as to what tomorrow will bring, our final day on the Avalon Peninsula. The last section of the Avalon Peninsula that we'll be touring is the Irish Loop. This historic section is the heart of Newfoundland culture. Although its scenery is quite nice, it's the music and people of this area that make it such a special place. Some of Newfoundland's most popular traditional Irish music bands call the Irish Loop home. There's the Masterless Men,
The ground of my hometown and go to see no more.
Shanaganook,
Have another drink, boys, oh have one with me. We're home from the sea, yes, we're back on the shore. And if you gets too drunk, boys, in his company.
and the Irish Descendants.
Oh, me name it is Sam Hall, and I hate just one and all.
One of the many places that you should visit on the Irish Loop is Mistaken Point. It contains the oldest evidence known of early multicellular life on the planet. Here, fossils estimated at 560 to 575 million years old have been found in the rocks of two ecological reserves. 50 miles from St. John's is a settlement called Ferryland, another early English colony from 1621. But it has no resemblance whatsoever to the Maryland metropolis of Baltimore. Yet both were founded by members of the Calvert family, and their histories are firmly linked. This brings our motorcycle tour of the Avalon to an end. The appeal of this area of the province is largely tied to the past and early North American colonization by both the French and the English. It is rather humbling to think that it all started right here on this section of the rock.
Travel far, many places I've seen, but my home's the only place I long to be. Still recall my younger days, fun and chores we helped in every way. Lots to do back in those times. With the little that we had, made it through just fine. Take me back to my own. From her shores I promise never more to roam. Take my hand and walk with me. Let's take a stroll through my old memories. Sad to see times go by. Houses boarded up, now empty inside. So many dreams.
As we ride through the narrow point of land between Placentia and Trinity Bays, we encounter a familiar sight: fog. With just 10 kilometers of land separating the cold Labrador Current and the warm Gulf Stream waters, fog can be seen here in excess of 200 days a year. Well, as interesting as the fog phenomenon is, we are more than happy to find the sun just moments away as we approach the western side of Trinity Bay. This area is best known for its ties to the fishery and its picturesque towns and coves all along its coastline. One of the first communities that we visited in the Trinity Bay West area was Clarenville. It is a bustling town and serves as a service center for Trinity Bay and Bonavista Bay region. You will find a little bit of everything here, from franchise restaurants, local craft stores, hotels, a regional hospital, and weekend drag racing. This is certainly the hub for the region. Trinity is a small town located in Trinity Bay. The harbor at Trinity was first used by fishing ships around the 16th century. The Portuguese explorer Gaspar Corte Real named the location Trinity as he arrived on Trinity Sunday in 1501. It was settled by wealthy merchants from Poole, England during the 18th century. Today, Trinity is better known as a filming location. It was the set location for the 2001 film The Shipping News and the 2002 television miniseries Random Passage. Wanda and I had the privilege and opportunity to tour the Random Passage film set on one cool and windy summer day in late August. Our tour guide Bernadette's love and passion for the area and its history was evident, and with her convincing storytelling, she made us feel as though it was us living and struggling on this very spot during the early days of the 19th century. Newfoundlanders knew how to survive in this harsh environment without much food, medicine, or contact with the outside world. Their dedication to hard work helped them survive back in those harsh days and spawned a reputation as hard workers for generations to come. Next, we find ourselves in Port Union. Port Union is an interesting and historical community overlooking Trinity Bay and the Catalina Harbor on the east side of Bonavista Peninsula. It is here at Port Union that William Coker founded the Fishermen's Protective Union in 1917. Port Union was also home base for the publication of the Fishermen's Advocate Journal. When John Cabot first saw land, he's reputed to have said, "O buena vista," or in English, "O happy sight," giving rise to the name of the town and nearby Cape Bonavista. Cabot's landing site has long been contested. At various times, historians have proposed Bonavista, St. John's in Newfoundland, Cape Breton Island, Nova Scotia, Labrador, and Maine as possibilities. But Cape Bonavista in Newfoundland is the location recognized by the Government of Canada and the United Kingdom as being Cabot's official landing place. Wherever Cabot landed, it is believed that his expedition were the first Europeans to set foot in North America since the Vikings, whose voyages a half a millennium earlier were probably unknown to the Bristol explorers. Apart from its historical significance, Bonavista serves up spectacular scenery. From the Cape Bonavista Lighthouse to the breaching humpback whales just offshore, and the collapsed sea caves at Dungeon Provincial Park, the Bonavista Peninsula is a must-see and a must-ride area of Newfoundland and Labrador. Before leaving Bonavista, we refuel our bikes with gas and our bodies with a local favorite, fish and chips. Then it's back on the bikes again and down the coast to Port Blandford for the night. From Kings Cove to Plate Cove West, from Somerville to Lethbridge, all the coastal towns along the Bonavista Peninsula leave you craving for more.
The ocean, and she's pounded by wind from the sea. You might think that she's rugged and cold, but she's home, sweet home to me. She's bordered by inlets, tickles and sounds, reaches by coves and by bays. She soothes your vision as you sail round her shores with a mixture of greens, browns.
After a good night's rest at the Serendipity Bed and Breakfast in Port Blandford, today it's off to Twillingate and the Notre Dame Bay area. Just a few minutes' ride away, we enter Terra Nova National Park, one of two national parks in Newfoundland and Labrador. Terra Nova's landscape is typical of the northeast coast of Newfoundland, but with remnants of the Appalachian Mountains contributing to its rugged terrain throughout the region. The park's seacoast consists of several rocky coves jutting into Bonavista Bay along areas stretching from north of Port Blandford to the Glovertown area. The inland portion of the park consists of rolling forest hills, exposed rock faces, bogs, ponds, and wetlands. Wildlife protected by the park range from the pine marten to the majestic moose. Terra Nova also protects an area containing remnants of the Beothuk Nation, as well as many of the early pioneer European settlements in the region. Nestled in the heart of central Newfoundland is the town of Gander. Unlike many towns in this province, Gander's pass is not linked to the sea, but rather the air. Gander was chosen for the construction of an airport in 1935 because of its location close to the northeast tip of North America. In 1936, construction of the base began and the town started to develop shortly after. Gander International Airport played an integral role in world aviation in the hours immediately following the September 11th attacks, when all of North American airspace was closed by Transport Canada and the United States Federal Aviation Administration. 38 civilian and 4 military flights bound for the United States were ordered to land at the airport. More than 6,600 passengers and airline crew members, equivalent to 66% of the local population, were stranded on that day. Residents of Gander and surrounding communities volunteered to house, feed, and entertain the travelers in what became known as Operation Yellow Ribbon. It's McDonald's for an early lunch and a little rest for our saddle butts before heading to the Notre Dame Bay community of Twillingate. Although Twillingate is today's destination, there are many places that warrant exploration along the scenic route, from Boyd's Cove Beothuk Interpretation Center to the quiet little coves hidden from the highway. We arrive in Twillingate at 1:30 p.m. and decide to check into our bed and breakfast before exploring the area. Staying at a bed and breakfast is a first for Wanda and I, and it's the only option in some of these off-the-beaten-path towns. The Captain's Legacy is a charming home built in 1881 by the late Ibram Jacobs. It has beautiful tin ceilings on the main floor and was designated a municipal heritage site by the town of Twillingate due to its authentic and historic value. The Captain's Legacy was home to the late Captain Peter Troke. Captain Troke sailed the MV Christmas Seal, testing for TB in the outports around Newfoundland and Labrador from the mid-1940s until 1970. We had the pleasure of meeting Captain Troke's son, Jack, a retired fisherman and seal hunt advocate. We spoke to him briefly at the Captain's Legacy, and Jack pointed out the hardships and dangers of living from the sea in rural Newfoundland. He goes on to explain how he lost his son and son-in-law in 2000 after their boat capsized, throwing them into the frigid North Atlantic waters outside Twillingate Harbor. We often forget the hardship and tragedy side of Newfoundland. We tend to only see its beauty as we tour the rock on our motorcycles. But that is the other truth of this place, a truth that haunts every bay and touches so many families. The waters off our coast can be so harsh and unforgiving. After getting settled away in our room, it's back on the motorcycles again for a tour of Twillingate Island. All in all, we rode 500 kilometers today, but it's riding through places like Kettle Cove and Bayview or Herring Neck and Crow Head that make motorcycling so special. You are one with your environment. You can smell the ocean breeze, you can hear the waves crash upon the shore, and you can feel the heat from the sun's midday rays, or the coolness in the air as the sun sets low on the horizon. After riding around all afternoon, it was time to find some place to sit, relax, and have some food. We find a nice little restaurant on the western side of the harbor overlooking Twillingate. The view from our table was absolutely stunning. Now it's time to park our motorcycles and explore the area on foot. Walking provides the opportunity to see things up close and personal. Here is a sample of some of the beautiful scenery of Twillingate and nearby Durrell. Wanda and I have so much fun getting off the beaten path, experiencing things that you will not find in a tourism guide or brochure. And the bed and breakfasts are serving up a more intimate experience than we could possibly get from a hotel environment. We are very surprised and pleased indeed. We awake to another beautiful day, and after some minor chain adjustments to Wanda's motorcycle and our farewells to Captain's Legacy, we start our journey back down the coast of Notre Dame Bay. Today our destination is Westport, located in the central west region of the province, and thus today also brings an end to our riding and touring of the central east region of the Rock. It is fitting that we end out our tour of the central east section of the Rock right here in Lewisport, at the bottom of Notre Dame Bay. Settlers first arrived at Lewisport in 1887 and engaged in the prosperous fishing, logging, and shipbuilding industries. Lewisport is named for Lewis Miller, an enterprising Scotsman who operated a logging company in central Newfoundland in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. The attraction here for Mr. Miller would have been the huge strands of birch, spruce, and pine, which grace the shores and remain here to this very day. We take time here in Lewisport to refuel the motorcycles and grab a snack before returning to the Trans-Canada Highway, heading west en route to the White Bay and Green Bay area.
There was a pretty maiden, she was going to a ball. She saw a jolly tinker hammering tins against the wall. Mission round Donnelly, girl knows says she, there's good blood in young Donnelly, he's away for me. He sauntered through the kitchen and he sauntered through the hall. He sauntered through the parlour overnight and ladies all. Mission round Donnelly, girl knows says she, there's good blood in young Donnelly, he's away for me. She then went up the stairs to dress and make her bed, and so Dixie's after her and knocked her on the bed. Mission round Donnelly, girl love says she, there's good blood in young Donnelly, he's away for me. She then went down the stairs to both and locked the door, and so Dixie's after her and knocked her on the floor. Mission round Donnelly, girl love says she.
This area of the province has special meaning for me. Baie Verte, White Bay, is the town in which I was born and lived my early childhood years. I feel a deep connection to this part of the island and always look forward to returning here. But before reaching the coastlines of the White Bay, Green Bay area, we continue our journey through the center of the province. The largest town in central Newfoundland is Grand Falls, Windsor, and it is home to the annual Salmon Festival. Some of the world's most popular bands have played at the Salmon Festival since it started in 1985. Bon Jovi, Aerosmith, Kiss, and the Eagles are just some of the bands that have hit the stage right here in Grand Falls. The earliest recorded history of Grand Falls dates back to 1768, when Lieutenant John Cartwright, while following the Exploits River through the Exploits Valley, named the waterfalls he found Grand Falls. However, it took until 1905 before the town of Grand Falls was established. Worried about the impending war in Europe, Alfred Harmsworth began looking for an alternative source of newsprint for his family's newspaper and publishing business. During their search for a suitable location to build and operate a pulp and paper mill, they discovered Grand Falls. The site had potential due to the access to lumber, the possibility of hydroelectricity, and a deep water port available in nearby Botwood. On January 7, 1905, the Harmsworths and Robert Gillespie Reed, owner of the Newfoundland Railway, formed the Anglo-Newfoundland Development Company, and the mill was constructed and opened on October the 9th, 1909. The mill produced its last roll of newsprint on February 12, 2009, and brought an end to its near 100 years of newsprint production. After riding through Grand Falls, Windsor, it was now time to refuel the bodies and the motorcycles before heading west. When riding motorcycle, it is important to make time for frequent ride breaks. The impact of the heat from the sun and the effects of riding on the body is a far different experience than you would have when riding within the comforts of your car. We leave Grand Falls shortly after lunch and continue westward through Newfoundland's interior. The final community that we ride through in Newfoundland's interior is Badger. Badger's history can be traced back to the Beothuk Indians. The Beothuk are known to have lived where the Badger Brook flows into the Exploits River. Badger was a strategically important point with regards to transportation by water. The Micmac are also known to have used this area as a campsite when traveling to the Exploits River onto Halls Bay. With Wanda's fuel range of just under 200 kilometers, we pull into the Esso station at Springdale Junction for our final refueling stop for the day. After a 15-minute rest, we are once again back in the saddle and en route to our destination for a 2-night stay and tour of the White Bay and Green Bay area. We arrive at the Baie Verte Peninsula Highway Junction and once again leave behind the fast-paced Trans-Canada Highway. It is a relaxing, feet-up 45-minute ride to Westport, our home base for touring this section of the rock. As we lean into the curves of the Westport Road, I am instantly reminded of those car rides many years ago with my parents and the motion sickness I would often experience. The road has improved a great deal since those early days of gravel and dust, and today I'm more than happy to experience it on two wheels with my favorite riding partner and wife, Wanda. For me, Westport is more than a destination. It is also the birthplace of my mother and the hometown to my beloved and remembered grandparents. It is a place that I hold dear to my heart. Some of my fondest childhood memories are of Westport, and it is a place that brings a warm smile to my face every time I return here. I remember the days long ago of squid jigging, cutting and drying hay, and playing cowboys and Indians up on Round Hill with childhood friends. Friends only in memory now. It's been another long and exhausting day for Wanda and I, and taking an evening break from riding to stroll through town is just what our tired mind, body, and soul needs to regenerate. Digital camera in hand, here are some of the shots that we captured as the sun sets on the bay in Westport. Another morning is broken, and it's time for more riding, hiking, and sightseeing in this beautiful area of Newfoundland and Labrador. Our first destination today is Fleur-de-Lis, located on the northwestern tip of the Baie Verte Peninsula. Fleur-de-Lis is also known for the unique Dorset Paleo-Eskimo soapstone quarry that has been discovered there. The site is just a short hike from the museum. You can view the quarry of unfinished and finished vessels still visible in the rock face. Paleo-Eskimos used the soapstone to create pots and lamps and lived in the area between 1200 and 1800 years ago. There is also evidence that the maritime archaic Indians used this site even earlier, about 4,000 years ago. We could not resist to hike to the top of the hill for a panoramic view of the area. The extra 5 minutes walk was well worth the effort. We return to our motorcycles and continue our tour of the Baie Verte Peninsula. Leaving the White Bay, we start our ride towards Lassie in the Green Bay. Lassie is located at the end of Route 414 at the head of Baie Verte Peninsula, between White Bay and Notre Dame Bay on the northeast coast of Newfoundland. Lassie was used by the Basque fishermen who called the fishing station Port de Siege. The French renamed the town Lassie, meaning the saw, referring to the hills around the community, which resembled the teeth of a saw. At the Outport Museum and Tea Room, we were served up a delicious lunch of pea soup and a turkey sandwich. We struck up a conversation with a retired American botanist who's been studying the plant life of the island for nearly 30 years. He says that his love affair with Newfoundland and its people keeps him coming back year after year. After lunch, we head back Route 414 to the fishing village of Harbour Round. The beautiful round-shaped harbor is filled with small fishing boats and stages. It is refreshing to see that the fishery still survives here, even though on a much smaller scale than was the case years ago. Just a short distance off Route 414, we arrive in Woodstock en route to the small community of Packet. Packet means hideaway in French, and with the hidden harbor, its namesake is understood. Packet was a base for the French seasonal fishery since the Treaty of Utrecht of 1713. Leaving Route 414, we move on to Route 412 and to Seal Cove. Seal Cove, on the eastern side of the White Bay, is another one of those beautiful little coves that gentles the soul and relaxes the mind. Seal Cove was the location for our mid-afternoon picnic. With the sun beaten down on the harbor and with temperatures nearing 30 degrees, it was time to remove some of that motorcycle clothing and just relax in the hot Newfoundland summer sun. The last town that we visit on the Bayvert Peninsula is Burlington. Burlington has been made famous by actor and comedian Sean Majumdar and Canadian Idol singer Rex Gowdy. That said, Burlington's true allure is its beautiful harbor and the rolling hills that surround the community. With day 4 coming to a close, we start our ride back to Westport to get prepared for tomorrow's adventures and for that well-deserved good night's rest at my parents' trailer on the bay. Today, we make our way out of the Central West region and into the west and southwest area of the province. We load our motorcycles and ready ourselves for another full day of riding. Tomorrow is day 5 of our riding, and it'll bring us through the scenic Humber Valley and on to the Port-au-Port Peninsula town of Stephenville. Heading west on the Trans-Canada Highway en route to Stephenville, we have the rolling hills to the left and Birchie Lake to the right. This region is known for its large lakes, rivers, great fishing and hunting, and of course, motorcycle riding. It is easy to understand why this area is so popular for the outdoor enthusiast, including camping and cottage goers. With miles of lakes to navigate, it is great for both fishing and boating, as well as snowmobiling during the winter months. Just south of Deer Lake, we enter what is arguably one of the most scenic 50 kilometers within the province. The road winds alongside the Humber River, nestled in the beautiful Humber Valley. The valley narrows at the western end of the lake where it flows into the lower Humber River. This area of the valley includes the local service district of Little Rapids, as well as the Humber Valley Golf Resort, adjacent to the Marble Mountain Ski Resort and the community of Steadybrook. The Humber Valley ends at Corner Brook, where the river flows into the Bay of Islands, appropriately named Humbermouth. We will see much more of the Corner Brook and Bay of Islands area in a couple of days' time, but after a short ride break here in Corner Brook, it's back on the motorcycles and back en route to Stephenville. The riding here on the western section of the island is great. The scenery is varied and the weather is always a few degrees warmer than the rest of the province in the summer months. This is a biker's paradise for sure. Stephenville was formerly known as Acadian Village between 1848 and 1870. The populace made a living from farming and fishing. The town's economy grew thanks in part to the United States Air Force placing a base here from 1941 to 1966. The base precipitated an economic boom of sorts on Newfoundland's southwest coast during the 1940s. With the massive investment from the government of the United States in the base, the Stephenville and St. George's Bay area began to flourish. The village of Stephenville grew from a hamlet of several hundred people with little or no infrastructure in 1941 into a modern town of over 5,000 by the mid-1950s. By the time the base closed in 1966, the town had more than doubled in size. The first thing on our agenda here in Stephenville is to find a place to stay for the night. Our first stop, the Day's End, had no vacancies, but with a cell phone and a little help from Google, we located the Dreamcatcher's Lodge, who did indeed have rooms available for the night. The hotel is located at the end of Main Street, right in the heart of Stephenville. We check in, take the luggage up to the room, and set up all of our devices for recharging. We have to charge 2 GoPro video cameras, a Canon Digital Rebel XS, a laptop, and 2 helmet intercom systems every single day. And then we have to transfer and file the daily footage to a 3 terabyte external hard drive. This can often take 60 minutes at the end of each ride day. After we sort out our electronics, we stroll around Stephenville's Main Street in search of a place to eat. Then it's back to the room for a couple of cold ones and a good night's sleep before heading down the south coast to Burgeo in the morning. Another sunny morning, another day of exploring from the 2 wheels of our motorcycles. And after our coffee and muffin at McDonald's, we are on the road again for day 6 of our tour of the Rock. The one thing that you must consider when motorcycling is your fuel range and the location of gas stations when riding off the main highways. Stephenville is nearly 200 kilometers from Burgeo, and with no gas stations past the town of Stephenville Crossing, it is there that we decided to refuel. It was now 170 kilometers and within range for Wanda's motorcycle. But just in case, I have a siphon hose on the trip so I can transfer fuel to Wanda's bike if needed. The Vulcan 2000 has a 300 plus kilometer range with its 21 liter tank. We arrive at Route 480, the Burgeo Highway, and settle in for 150 kilometers of wilderness riding. The first 35 kilometers of our ride wind through river valleys and dense evergreen forest that covers the long-range mountains.
I love it.
Where the highway meets a woods road, the pavement heads south and the landscape begins to change. The trees thin out and eventually fade away to reveal barrens strewn with uncounted boulders. It's a wild land dotted with blue ponds. Burgeo is one of the largest towns on the south coast, with a population of just over 1,600. The name was originally Portuguese Vergio, but evolved through the years. Settled by the Europeans in the 1700s, Burgeo has grown into a major service and transportation center for the western half of the south coast. Arriving in Burgeo shortly after noon, we were in awe of the surrounding scenery as we parked the motorcycles to check into the Burgeo Haven, our bed and breakfast for the night. From the moment we entered the room, we fell in love with the place. The extra-large room overlooked a beautiful mature garden with the ocean inlet just beyond. It's a place that Wanda and I could see ourselves returning to time and time again. The sense of being at one with nature really comes to life here. No tour of an area is complete without a hike, and we decided to take a closer look at Burgeo on foot. After a 6-kilometer walk, we get back on the motorcycles again and head for Sandbanks Provincial Park. This park was worth the 150-kilometer ride here from the Trans-Canada Highway, and whose beaches rival those of the Caribbean. Although it was a gray, foggy day, we enjoyed our stroll on the sandy beaches immensely. Day 7 has arrived, and it's time to return to Stephenville to complete our tour of the Port-au-Port Peninsula. Back on the motorcycles again and riding northwest along the Caribou Trail on this wonderful, warm, sunny day to the TCH Route 1. We check in once again to the Dreamcatcher Lodge and unload the bikes before heading around the beautiful Port-au-Port Peninsula. The most astonishing thing that Wanda and I have discovered on our tour of the Rock is the differences in landscape in the various regions of the province. Surprisingly, once again, the Port-au-Port Peninsula serves up a scenic ride like nothing else we've seen on this motorcycle tour. We ride through the narrow point of land connecting the Port-au-Port Peninsula to the rest of the island and take Route 460 for the loop around the 130-kilometer peninsula. During and after the Treaty of Utrecht in 1713 and the Treaty of Paris in 1763, France retained the right to use the west coast of the island. This area became known as the French Shore, and the Port-au-Port Peninsula was at its very center. Scattered settlements continued in the area until 1904, when France relinquished its right of use to the French shore. The Port-au-Port Peninsula represents the most varied ethnic and linguistic mix in the entire island of Newfoundland, including Mi'kmaq families and with the highest proportion of French-speaking settlements on the island of 15%. The beautiful grassy farmland follows the coast for much of the ride from Abraham's Cove, Jerry's Nose, and Ship Cove, and on through Lower Cove. At Sheaves Cove, a cascading waterfalls can be seen just a short distance from the highway. The community of Mainland is more than 200 years old, and from here you can see the Red Island. Red Island was named by Captain James Cook in 1767 when he noticed its reddish-colored cliffs. Red Island was used as a fishing station by the Basque in the 16th and 17th centuries, and then by the French fishermen from St. Pierre, Brittany, and the Acadian communities in Nova Scotia until early this century. Blonde and I are always looking for a nice place to take a ride break. We decided to stop in Lourdes for a chance to walk through their church gardens and grotto. We then just relaxed and laid out in the sun. The ride breaks are quick, and before long it's back on the bikes again and riding through the communities of Piccadilly and Agathuna. Nothing beats riding your motorcycle through areas that you've never ridden before. You never really know what you'll see or expect to find around the next bend in the road. We continue on back into Stephenville and return to the Dreamcatcher Lodge for the night. One ride day rolls into another, and it is now day 8 of our tour of the Rock. Today it is time to explore the Bay of Islands region. Corner Brook, the only city in this region of the province, is a place that I visited quite often as a child. Living in a small town on the northern peninsula with no sign of city life made a trip to Corner Brook pretty special to a kid. After we refuel the bikes, it's on to the community of Lark Harbour at the entrance of the Bay of Islands. From Curling to Halfway Point and from Benoit's Cove to Frenchman's Cove, the late morning ride was just beautiful. James Cook, the famous British cartographer and explorer, was the first to survey and record the geography of the area. Throughout the summer of 1767, he surveyed most of the west coast of Newfoundland, including both sides of the Bay of Islands. We arrive in beautiful Lark Harbour and are most taken by the long-range mountains, which rise out of the water and reach nearly 2,000 feet above sea level. The most striking thing about the day, however, was the hazy skies on this hot summer day. We later learned it was due to the massive forest fires from across the straits in Quebec and Labrador that was the cause of the haze, which also explained the odd smell in the air. After a short ride break at Lark Harbor, it was time to once again return to Corner Brook to check into the hotel and to take a closer look at the area. It was there that I noticed Wanda's motorcycle chain was again sagging, and with no more adjustment possible, we now had to take it to a garage to have it looked at. Something like this can really affect your riding plans and can have you hanging around an area much longer than you anticipated as you wait for parts or repairs. We find the Honda dealership at 2 p.m. and although closing in just 2 hours and no appointment, the gentleman told us he would have someone take a look at it to see if there was anything that they could do. He returns a short time later to tell us that although the sprocket is worn, he can have a couple links taken out of the chain which will allow further adjustment. He said he will have someone do it right away and we could drop back for it at closing time. Wanda and I decide to explore Corner Brook on my motorcycle for a couple hours as we wait. While riding downtown, we ran into a friend and fellow motorcycle rider, Bert Thornhill from the Western Knights Motorcycle Club. We had a fine chat, but unfortunately we couldn't take him up on his offer to go partying tonight due to our family commitments in nearby Pasadena. But who knows? Some other time, on some other day, we may get to do just that. Back at the Honda dealership, we thank them profusely for helping us get back on the road in order to continue our province-wide tour of the Rock without any delays. We return to the hotel and decide on a place to eat before heading to Pasadena for a late evening ride and a family visit. The Northern Peninsula begins at Deer Lake and continues north on Route 430. Our advice to those who have not been here before is to ride slowly and stop often. Rushing through will deprive yourself of a complete and unforgettable experience. The Northern Peninsula is the longest peninsula in Newfoundland and Labrador and contains many glacier fjords, even some visible from the highway beginning right here in Gros Morne. Just moments from Deer Lake, you begin to climb up the mountaintops of Long Range Mountains. The elevation is such that your ears fill with pressure as you reach the top, but return to normal shortly after you descend the other side of Southeast Mountain. We are now in the heart of Gros Morne National Park. Perhaps the best way to put Gros Morne National Park into perspective is to say that it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. That designation puts it on par with such natural wonders as Australia's Great Barrier Reef. Once you reach the ocean, you follow the coast along beautiful Bombay, weaving in and out of its many little coves. The temperature reached 30 degrees in Deer Lake, but it was 25 degrees here at Bombay, where we took time to rest and overlook the scenic towns of Norris Point and Woody Point in the distance. Back on the bikes, we're now en route to Rocky Harbor for lunch. It was only a matter of minutes when we left the warm Bombay area when the temperatures dropped to about 16 degrees as we reached the coast. It felt a little cool considering we left Deer Lake just a short time ago in t-shirts and 30 degrees. Riding motorcycle, unlike many forms of travel, really does tease your senses, and you experience the changes in weather in real time. We arrive at the Sunset Restaurant a little cool, a little hungry, but nothing warms the body and soul better than a bowl of pea soup and a homemade sandwich. This being our 9th day of riding, we are looking forward to just relaxing for a couple of days in my hometown of Daniels Harbor. We have a lot of exploring to do in this region during the next 5 days. We leave the warmth of the cozy restaurant to once again hit the road for the last 87 kilometers of riding for the day. The weather is cool and the sky threatens rain. By the time we arrived in Sally's Cove, the light rain began. Time to pull over and put the rain gear on before we get wet, cold, and uncomfortable. We continue on, and the light rain turns to heavy rain by the time we reach Cow Head. With only 40 kilometers to go, we can handle whatever Mother Nature puts in front of us at this point. Truth is, this was the first rain that we've encountered since leaving St. John's 9 days ago. We've been blessed so far. We arrive in Daniels Harbor in the mid-afternoon for some rest, relaxation, and a few sociables as we plan our region's excursions, riding and hiking for the next 5 days. After a 2-day rest and spending some quality time with my parents, we're back on the road again and back exploring the Grossmorn area of the Northern Peninsula. Today we're heading to the Tablelands in Grossmorn National Park. The ride heading south on Route 430 on this warm blue sky day is absolutely breathtaking. The Strait of St. Lawrence to the right, the wetlands and long-range mountains to the left, and nothing but great riding ahead have you wishing that this day never ends. We arrive in Wiltondale and take Route 431 to Woody Point. The road winds through a valley of big timber before reaching the Lowman River. Lowman was made famous by Lee Wolfe, an adventure writer, pilot, and sport fisherman from the United States. In 1946, Wolfe began bringing American fishermen to these rivers teeming with large salmon. His wife Ella purchased Keldova Lodge at Lowman in 1947, and Wolfe would meet his sports there and ferry them north, first to tents, then to cabins as his business expanded. His early films about Newfoundland and Labrador angling spawned a career out of traveling the globe doing outdoor shows with celebrities. He died in 1991, suffering a heart attack at age 86 while on a routine flight to renew his pilot license. Other than the highway itself, little has changed to the scenery en route to Woody Point. Although Woody Point was once the economic capital of western Newfoundland, today it serves as a haven for artists, photographers, and writers who become inspired here by its raw and natural beauty. Just moments away from Woody Point, the landscape takes on a Mars-like atmosphere, with its reddish-brownish earth reaching as far as the eye can see. It is not just atypical landscape to Newfoundland and Labrador, but atypical to the world. The color is due to the oxidization of the high iron content of the Earth's mantle that was forced to the surface 500 million years ago. So the color is actually rust, formed on the rock. This is more than a place to ride by, it is a place to explore. We park the motorcycles at the base of Table Mountain to take the short 2-kilometer hike into the gorge. There is something special about this place, and you can't help but feel like you are visitors on some distant planet. After we reach the gorge, we sit for a while next to a pristine brook and stare at the fantastically rare scenery. Although there's no designated trail to the summit of Table Mountain, you can choose just about anywhere to ascend to the top. With temperatures in the high 20s, the snow patches near the top were too appealing to ignore. The hike appears easy, but the shale rock shifts under your feet, making it difficult hiking at times. There's something about snow that brings the kid out in everyone. After we've had our fun, we relax and soak up the hot sun while taking in the awesome scenery at the top of Table Mountain. Back at the base of the mountain, we prepare for the relaxing ride home to Daniels Harbor as we once again ride through the spectacular scenery of Grossmoor National Park. We awake to another beautiful sunny day on day 12 of our tour of the Rock. Today we're heading to the northern tip of the peninsula and the St. Anthony area. After our little lecture from my parents on motorcycle safety, it's off we go. The coastline of the northern peninsula is absolutely beautiful in its own right, and it's wide open to the Gulf of St. Lawrence from Daniels Harbor to Eddies Cove, nearly 200 kilometers away. We stop at the Lunchbox Cafe in Flowers Cove for home-cooked soup and sandwich. We are absolutely charmed by Chastity and the wonderful hospitality she serves with her delicious food. She was a beautiful soul indeed. We gas up the motorcycles again and head across the tip of the northern peninsula into the White Bay and on to St. Anthony. We check into a hotel north, unload our bags, and head back on the road again. Our first destination today is Lansom Meadows. Discovered in 1960, it is the most famous site of a Viking settlement in North America. Dating to around the year 1000, it is notable for its possible connection with the attempted colony of Vinland, established by Leif Erikson around the same time period. It was named a World Heritage Site by UNESCO in 1978. Adjacent to the famed site is Norstad, a period replica community complete with actors. We tour the site and browse through the many buildings and artifacts. It is humbling to know that we stand on the same ground as the Vikings did over 1,000 years ago. After we try our skills at axe throwing, we're back on the road again to St. Anthony and the Lighthouse hike. Although the walk to the top of the hill was nice and the scenery of St. Anthony was beautiful, the highlight of the hike today was our encounter with several small foxes. They were as caught up in us as we were in them. We continue our tour of the area and head over to Goose Cove. Goose Cove is a small fishing community dating back to the mid-1800s. Fishing is still a big part of the community, nearly 150 years later. Well, that's it for today as we retire to our hotel. Tomorrow we head back to Main Brook and on to Port au Soir, then back to Daniels Harbour again for the night. The landscape is ever-changing, and from the forested area of Main Brook on the White Bay side of the Northern Peninsula to the barren lands on the Gulf side, the eyes are constantly aroused by the spectacular changes in scenery. We arrive at the Port au Soir Lighthouse for a break and a few photos. After our short break, we head back into town to the Anchor Cafe for a bite to eat before hitting the road again for the final hour of riding to Daniels Harbour. It's been another full day of riding and exploring. Welcome to day 14 and Grossmorn Mountain. Today, we hike to the summit of Grossmorn at 806 meters. This 16-kilometer hike will challenge even the most veteran of hikers, let alone two motorcycle riders. The first few kilometers of the trail is a gentle climb through forest and a few clearings. The mountain looms larger as you get closer to the base. Preparation for a strenuous hike is very important. The first time Wanda and I climbed the mountain in 1991, we were just in our 20s and thought of nothing. At the time, we took one small bottle of pop and a big bag of potato chips. We were out of nourishments before we started the climb. With age comes wisdom, and this time in my backpack, I carried 4 liters of water and enough grub for a small army.
That's exactly 4 kilometers we've come.
With the lightest part of the trail behind us, and standing at the base of Grossmorn, we settle in for the strenuous hike to the top. The heart rate pounds as you pull yourself up the large rocks. There were times I'd count the steps until I could go no more, and then after each rest I would try to add a few more steps before stopping again. It is important to push the limits of your body and mind. That's what memories are made of. We reach the summit of Grossmorn at 806 meters and have a snack before going down the backside of the mountain. Those who have climbed Grossmorn know that as wonderful as the summit is, the best is yet to come, with the amazing view of 10 Mile Pond as you descend. The climb up Grossmorn was strenuous, but the descent was grueling. The constant pounding on the knees as your weight transfers downward onto the rocks below. We rest for a little while back at the mountain's base and are entertained by a bird wanting to share our trail mix. We continue our hike and return to the motorcycles for the ride back to Daniels Harbor. With over 6 hours of strenuous hiking, it was extremely nice to feel the comfort of our motorcycle seat and watching the soothing landscape pass us by. Heading north near Western Brook, we ride up on caribou grazing by the roadside. The loud pipes must have startled them as they began to run right alongside us. It's moments like this you realize why this is such a special place. We arrived back in Daniels Harbor before sunset to a family curious as to how our day turned out. One word: unforgettable. The ride home. It's day 15 and thus the long and grueling 800 kilometers back to St. John's by sundown. This trip was amazing, and I am blessed to have shared it with my best friend and wife, Wanda. She turned out to be a seasoned rider and gained so much confidence during the nearly 6,000 kilometers. I am so proud of her. Together, we have smelled, tasted, felt, and seen the Rock on 2. And I can say without hesitation that this has been the best vacation ever. Thanks for sharing this experience with Wanda and I. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.